Hi, this is Jim Jordan with Create Vibrant Health. And today I want to do a little short video on the Delta variant strain of the SARS-CoV-2 and the PCR test and how they're connected. So first of all, the big news these days is there's a new strain, there's a variant strain of the SARS-CoV-2, which is, we're told, is the cause of COVID-19, the COVID-19 syndrome. And there's breakouts, apparently they're happening. And in the United States, we're being told that these breakouts are happening in areas where there's less vaccinated people. So the official narrative is that the unvaccinated are transmitting this Delta strain to the rest of the population, the vaccinated people and everybody else. Yet, in a German study, there was a study done, a meta-analysis of all the countries in the world, and they found that the higher levels of Delta variant positive tests came in countries that had the highest vaccination rates. So the question is, how can these both be true? How can you have the most vaccinated countries in the world have the highest amounts of Delta variant strain cases, and in the United States, the highest amount of the Delta variant cases are coming from communities or counties where there's less vaccinated people? How can both be true? So there's a way, they're both true, actually. But first, let's go back to how are we identifying these positive tests? COVID positive test, Delta variant strains positive tests are being tested by what's called a PCR test, polymerase chain reaction test, invented by Nobel Prize winning chemist Kary Mullis in 1993. And the question is that test actually testing for a virus? And the answer is no. It's testing for a chain of nucleic acids that is correlated, according to the official public health officials, to a virus, SARS-CoV-2. And setting aside whether that's true or not, whether there is a correlation, let's just take it at that. And the Delta variant is also being identified by a PCR test. So what is it that happened in the United States in about, I think, late April of this spring of 2021? Well, basically what happened is the CDC changed their guidelines for the PCR test to be considered positive. So the way the PCR test works is you take a sample of whatever you're testing, mucus or whatever, and you put it under an electron microscope and you magnify it. The more magnifications you have, the more likely you'll find the thing you're looking for, the nucleic acids, which are claimed to be the connection to the virus COVID-19. SARS-CoV-2, which causes the illness known as COVID-19. So the higher the magnifications, the more likely you get a positive test. So what came out is that in the last year plus is that the PCR test gives you an enormous amount of false positives. Okay, even Dr. Fauci himself said anything above 35 cycles or amplifications in the PCR test is essentially meaningless. Yet, the standards there was no real national standard. We're having PCR tests run at 40 or even higher, 45, which is almost always going to identify a positive PCR test. I mean, that from the perspective of the public health officials, that is a positive case. So now we're being told breakouts of positive cases of Delta variant. That means the PCR test is identifying what's called a positive test. Okay? So what happened is, since there was this obvious, it was very apparent that the PCR test was not accurate. It was giving lots of false positives, which ramped up the numbers the whole time to make us think that we're in a pandemic. The CDC changed the policy. They put it down back to 28 amplifications. However, 28 amplifications was only for people that were vaccinated. That's right. In other words, still there is this not the standard for if you've been unvaccinated. If you're unvaccinated, the lab can run 35 cycles, 40 cycles, or whatever cycles it wants. So in other words, there's two different standards. That's like having, let's say, a test like a scale to measure your weight. And you have two groups of people, people from the same community. And one group of people, the scale starts at negative 20 pounds, and the other group, it starts at positive 20 pounds. So guess what? The people that start at negative 20 pounds are all going to see like they're either good, healthy weight or a little underweight, but not overweight, less likely to be overweight. And the people that step on the scale where it's at plus 20 pounds, they're going to be overweight. as a rule, because there's two standards. It's weighted against the people that are stepping on the scale plus 20 pounds. The same thing with the PCR test. If you have an unvaccinated person that comes in with no symptoms, asymptomatic, tests positive at 40 cycles, that is a positive Delta variant case. If you have a vaccinated person that comes in with moderate or mild symptoms and tests negative at 28, that is not a case. That is not a positive case. And so the setup was designed by the CDC to make it look like the unvaccinated are the ones that are testing positive. So you're basically, nothing has changed other than the test that's being used and how the test is being applied to the population. So that explains why in the United States, where they have two standards for vaccinated versus unvaccinated, you're having the public is being told that the unvaccinated are the ones that are carrying the Delta variant because they're the ones more likely to test positive because they're the ones that are having PCR tests run at over the 35 cycles, which is much more likely to be a positive test. So this is a big scam, okay? And this is being driven by the media 24/7 to the point where my partner's relatives, family did not want her to visit because they're afraid of the Delta variant. Again, coming from, they're told, the unvaccinated. Yet in the German study, it was clear that the countries that had the most vaccinations, the highest vaccination rates, had the highest number of positive tests for a Delta variant. So what is the Delta variant? Okay, so let's say within the view of the germ theory, we have the SARS-CoV-2 as a virus, and there's a mutation of that virus turning into a Delta variant. Okay, so in the world of virology, that can happen. The viruses can mutate. But there's another possibility. And in a webinar that I produced a while ago, I talked about what are exosomes. Exosomes are basically identical to viruses. You cannot distinguish them. Under an electron microscope, the exact same structure, everything. The Journal of Virology magazine said there is no test to distinguish between an exosome and a virus. An exosome is an excretion from your body's own cells of nucleic acids in an attempt to detoxify some poison. That's right. A virus and an exosome cannot be distinguished. So is the Delta variant a virus, or is it an attempt of the body to try to detoxify the spike protein that is being driven by the vaccine? I don't have an answer to that, but that is one possible explanation that would explain why the countries with the higher vaccination rates have the higher number of tests positive for the Delta variant. In the United States, the reason for the higher number, the belief at least that the unvaccinated are carrying a Delta variant is because the test is set up in a way to maximize the positive test for the unvaccinated and minimize for the vaccinated. As simple as that. So again, you can be asymptomatic, no symptoms at all, test positive at 40 amplifications if you're unvaccinated, and you'll be considered a positive case. You can be symptomatic, actually, with mild to moderate symptoms, and test negative at 28 if you're vaccinated, and that would be considered a negative case. Yet if you test that person, if you amplify another 5 or 10 amplifications, they very well would be likely tested positive. So the key is to not be fooled by this. This can all be documented on the CDC website. They mention this. They talk about how they're having a different standard for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So that is a preposterous way to try to create a rational public health policy. So be on guard for these types of tricks. The variant strain may very well be an exosome that your body is just producing to detoxify from the spike proteins, and even the unvaccinated could be producing this variant strain because they can be around people who are vaccinated and get the spike proteins that can be transmitted to spike protein, and their body is trying to detoxify that. Or it could be an attempt to detoxify something else in the environment. There's no way to know because the spike protein, because the Delta variant is not correlated to a specific virus. It is just a way it's a variation of the PCR test of the test that was being run for COVID-19. That's all it is. And we don't know what it's reflecting to. We don't know if it's referring to a virus or what it's referring to. So that's, from my perspective, what's actually going on. This is really dangerous because the vaccinated are being told that the unvaccinated are a threat to them, when in fact it may very well be the reverse of that. The people that are producing, that were vaccinated could be producing spike proteins that can be transmitted to the unvaccinated, which could cause them to be sick. I have some friends that that's happened to. And I'm not saying that is the truth, that is a possibility. But what we need to do is start questioning things very deeply, questioning everything we hear in the media. Okay, so essentially there is a variant strain spin now on the official story, and the official story did not have an accurate test. It did not have an accurate PCR test, which was even recognized by the CDC when they changed the PCR test. And it does not have a correlation to a purified virus that has been proven to be a cause of illness to date. So this is the latest news, at least my perspective on the latest news. And to not fall for this, it's just another spin that is going to get people to be antagonistic to each other and afraid of each other when there's no need to be afraid of each other. There's plenty of, even if you believe in the virus germ theory, there are plenty of things you can do to protect yourself from infectious agents that are natural and even pharmaceutical. The vaccine does not do that any better than many of the other options that you have. And the vaccine is also being shown to be extremely dangerous and toxic, where more people are dying from this vaccine than any other combination of deaths from all vaccines prior for the last 15 years. That's how dangerous this is. And that's just a maximum of about 10% of what's actually happening, because the belief is that, or the assumption is that the VAERS report is only about 10% of what's actually happening in the population. So it's probably 10 times higher than what we're actually hearing through the VAERS vaccine adverse event database. So that's the news for today. Keep on your toes and keep your mind sharp and question everything. And I say, and verify it for yourself. Question everything you hear in the mainstream media. Question everything and use your common sense, your own discernment, your own capacity for critical thinking, and your own intuition is your best guide through these very treacherous times with a lot of misinformation and propaganda coming your way. So this is Jim Jordan with Create Vibrant Health, wishing you a great day.